The daughter raised her hand and added details about the incident to the vice principal. In light of the recent incident involving my daughter, I have provided her with guidance on self-protection. The adult dragon with red hair was very angry about this. He accused us and insulted us. I couldn't bear his insults anymore and went up to stop him. At the suggestion of the Silver Dragon Queen, the vice principal prevented him from continuing to cause trouble and presented the results of the handling to the children. After Vice Principal Wilson finished recounting the details of the fight, Noah suggested that she needed to provide additional information. Noticing Noah's gesture of raising her hand, Vice Principal Wilson turned to her and said, "Noah, do you have anything to add?" Noah crossed her arms and placed them on her chest with a displeased expression. She turned to look at Lal, standing beside her, revealing some details of the incident that hadn't been mentioned. Firstly, in the canteen, he deliberately provoked me. Overturning the plate was just an accident. Secondly, in the backyard of the dormitory, they rushed at me and scared me. I accidentally broke his arm in self-defense. Lal became nervous when he saw Noah's unhappy expression. He looked at her with a frightened expression, his body trembling slightly, and slowly took a step back. Noah's face was expressionless, her brow furrowed slightly. She looked at him with serious eyes, as if confirming whether what she said was true. She was still angry about his provocation yesterday. Due to the terrifying aura emanating from Noah, Lal was so scared that he almost cried. He immediately hid behind his father again, tightly holding onto his father's hem, revealing only half of his body, and hesitantly answered Noah's words. That's right." Lal's father turned to his son with a puzzled expression. He didn't understand why his son was so afraid of a girl. He asked his son in confusion, "Why are you so afraid of her?" After listening to Noah's additional details, Leon, standing behind her, raised a hand and held his chin, thinking for a moment. Then he looked at Noah and expressed his thoughts. "Noah, I think you did something wrong." Noah seemed to notice that Leon's words had a tone of accusation. She lifted her head, lowered her eyebrows, and gently clenched her hands into small fists. She looked at him with a slightly nervous mood, prepared to accept Leon's reprimand. However, contrary to her expectations, Leon didn't criticize her approach to self-defense. He lowered his head, bent down, patted his knee, and proposed a method to deal with similar incidents. "If you encounter this kind of thing again, you should kick his knee first." "Okay." Noah was stunned for a moment. She looked at Leon's knee and was puzzled by his suggestion. Why kick the knee? Leon straightened his body, crossed his arms, and looked ahead with a confident expression. On the battlefield, if a crimson flame dragon's knee is injured, they are easily attacked. A blazing flame seemed to emerge from behind him, igniting his passion for battle. Noah nodded, understanding what Leon meant. She took out a notebook and pen, listening to Leon's explanation while jotting down the method. "Okay, I'll pay attention next time." If something similar happened again in the future, she might use this method. After watching Leon teach Noah self-defense, Lal's father couldn't bear it anymore. He believed that Leon intentionally taught his daughter harmful knowledge and guided her to bully his son. He was very angry and pointed at Leon, saying loudly to Vice Principal Wilson, "Principal, did you hear that? This guy actually taught his daughter to bully my child in public." Leon had a smile on his face, a calm expression, and paid no attention to Lal's father's words. However, Lal's father's next statement made them uneasy. For a student with violent tendencies like her, an apology is no longer sufficient. she should be directly expelled from school. Upon hearing him clamoring for the vice principal to expel Noel, Leon opened his eyes in surprise. Roswitha and Noel also became nervous. They all looked at Lal's father. Seeing Lal's father trying to make a scene, Vice Principal Wilson, standing nearby, raised his hand to stop him. Lal's dad, please calm down. Whether or not to expel Noel will be decided by Street his academy. Moreover, many students have reported that Lal often bullies vaporous dragons. The students in the canteen last night also proved that Lal deliberately provoked Noah first. Vice Principal Wilson also added some of Lal's usual behavior, stating that this wasn't the first time he had bullied a younger dragon. As the vice principal spoke, Lal lowered his head nervously and looked aside. He seemed to know his approach was wrong. Lal's father was still angry. He didn't accept the vice principal's explanation. His son was bullied, but he was also accused of provoking others first. He widened his eyes and angrily said to the vice principal, "Principal, do you mean their daughter beat up my son? And the academy not only didn't punish her, but also accused my son of deliberately provoking her." Leon couldn't stand Lal's father throwing tantrums. He walked forward, looked into Lal's father's eyes, and loudly rebuked him. "Don't you feel ashamed? How old is your son? He was beaten up by my 1-year and 2-month-old daughter. What are you shouting about?" Upon hearing that Leon's daughter was much younger than his son, Lal's father was slightly surprised. However, he still hadn't restrained himself and continued to argue loudly to Leon. "Never mind how old my son is. The point is." They all looked at each other with angry eyes, as if sparks were about to ignite between them. At this moment, Lal whispered his age. I am 7 years and 11 months old." Leon and Lal's father looked at him together and fell silent for a moment. Lal noticed the adults watching him and was scared. He timidly took a step back. The air suddenly quieted down for a few seconds. After learning about Lal's age, Leon couldn't help but laugh. To prevent laughing too loudly, he covered his mouth with his hand. He looked at Lal's father with mocking eyes and said, "If I encountered such a shameful thing, I would dig 3,000 feet deep and bury myself, letting this matter rot in my stomach forever." Lal's father became even more angry when he saw Leon's smug expression. He was so angry that he couldn't think of anything to refute Leon. Since he had nothing to say to Leon's daughter, he shifted the focus of his insults from Noah to their entire family. He said with an angry expression and gritted his teeth, "A coward who dares not even show his tail. What right do you have to say about my son?" He rudely pointed at Roswitha and Noah standing nearby. "I think your whole family is lowly." Roswitha and Noah furrowed their brows slightly, looking at Lal's father with displeased expressions. They all noticed his rude behavior, but couldn't say anything for a moment. At this moment, Leon reached out and tightly grasped the finger that Lal's father pointed at them. Then, Leon forcefully twisted his fingers in the opposite direction. He said to Lal's father with a slightly angry tone, "You pointed at me and cursed, I endured it. But how dare you point and curse at my wife and daughter?" Lal's father's fingers were held so tightly in Leon's grip that he couldn't break free for a moment. He closed his eyes tightly in pain and raised his head, screaming loudly, "Ah!" Seeing Leon take the initiative to stop Lal's father, Roswitha felt some relief. She quietly smiled and silently evaluated his behavior. "Leon, he's quite protective of the child." Lal's father tried several times and finally broke free from Leon's hand. He held his painful finger and took a few steps back. However, he still didn't seem to have learned his lesson. He frowned and looked at Leon with an angry expression. He gently rubbed his injured finger and let loose with harsh words for Leon. "How dare you hit me? Do you know who I am?" Lal's father angrily rushed towards Leon, intending to fight him. Seeing that Lal's father's actions were off, the other two fathers rushed forward and pulled him back. "Dude, don't be angry. The principal is still watching. Don't fight here." Although Lal's father was held back, he still wanted to break free. He revealed his identity to Leon, attempting to intimidate him. "I am the Duke of the Crimson Flame Dragon Clan. Our leader is Constantin." However, Leon wasn't afraid of his identity. He hugged himself and pretended to be scared. Come on, I'm so scared." Faced with this farce, Roswitha couldn't bear to watch anymore. She walked up and said to Lal's father, "Sir, this is a minor conflict among children at school. Involving the family status of both parties will not benefit you in any way." Roswitha looked at Lal's father with a serious expression and expressed her opinion. "I believe that Street his academy will make a fair judgment regardless of the outcome. We are willing to accept it." Then she turned her head and looked confidently at Vice Principal Wilson. After all, the final outcome of this fight still needs to be judged by the vice principal. Relying solely on fights between parents or involving the status of both sides cannot lead to a good outcome. Vice Principal Wilson smiled and nodded with satisfaction. Silver Dragon Clan's queen truly has a grand vision. He looked at Lal's father, who was still angry, and gave him the final warning. "Lal's dad, if you insist on causing trouble in school and escalating the situation, we can only cancel your son's student enrollment record." Hearing this, Lal's father froze. He stopped struggling and slowly calmed down, his anger half gone. Lal also didn't want to be unable to go to school because of his father's misconduct. He walked forward and grabbed his father's hem. He lifted his head with a grieved expression to persuade his father. "Dad, forget it. I still want to continue my studies at school." Upon hearing what Lal said, Lal's father hesitated. He gradually restrained his unreasonable attitude and temporarily calmed down. He closed his eyes, pretended to cough, and calmly said to the vice principal, "I just lost my composure. We also accept the academy's ideas." However, Lal's father still seemed to hold a dissatisfied attitude. He looked at Leon and Roswitha with angry eyes and made a plan. "I'll step back for now, but once we're out of school, we'll see who has the last laugh." Since both parents had calmed down, Vice Principal Wilson announced the outcome of the fight. "Okay. In this incident, Lal is at fault first, while Noah acted in self-defense, though, with excessive force." He turned to Noah first and announced her punishment. Noah will receive oral education from her homeroom teacher and reflect on her behavior. Noah lightly clenched her small fist and looked at him with surprise. She didn't expect her punishment to be less severe. Then he looked at Lal and his two classmates. Lal and his two classmates will each write a self-criticism and submit it to the homeroom teacher. In addition, you are responsible for classroom hygiene for a week. This is the final processing result. Lal and his classmates sadly lowered their heads and accepted the punishment. After the incident was resolved, Leon and Roswitha left the office with Noah. In the hallway, Noah turned and waved goodbye. "Well, I'll go back to the classroom first." Roswitha nodded, indicating she could leave. Leon and Roswitha watched her leave. At this moment, Leon seemed to remember something. He looked at Noah's back and waved, reminding her of the method he had taught her. "If they dare to bully you again, you must kick their knees first." Noah glanced back at Leon. Though she didn't say anything, she nodded, indicating she would remember his advice. At that moment, Vice Principal Wilson suddenly appeared behind Leon. He walked forward and said, "Mr. Leon." Leon was so startled that he shouted. His face looked uneasy. Leon turned to Vice Principal Wilson with a smile and said nervously, "Vice Principal Wilson, do you have anything else?" He was worried that the vice principal had heard him loudly reminding Noah to bully others. He nervously thought, he probably didn't hear what I just said, right? However, the vice principal didn't seem to notice what Leon said. He asked another question with a serious expression. "Although we have only met a few times, I have always had a question. You've never let your tail show." Upon hearing the vice principal's words, Leon's mood became even more tense. He was worried that the vice principal suspected his identity. He opened his mouth to explain, but couldn't come up with a reason. He silently thought, did he discover my identity? Vice Principal Wilson smiled and looked at Leon. "I can't see which noble dragon clan you come from. If you're willing, can you tell me?" Noticing the situation, Roswitha quickly walked over and took Leon's arm, pretending they were a loving couple. She quickly explained to the vice principal, "My husband is not a member of the Noble Dragon Clan. He is just an ordinary member of our Silver Dragon Clan." Leon was forced to lean against Roswitha and nervously echoed, "That's right. I'm just a commoner." Vice Principal Wilson didn't seem to doubt Leon's identity. He touched his beard and said, pleased that they had raised the talented Noah. "The remarkable union between the two of you has brought forth an exceptionally gifted young dragon, which is nothing short of a miracle. Street His Academy welcomes such children to enroll. Do you understand?" The vice principal looked at them with a kind expression, but there seemed to be other meanings in his words. "You should have more children, the more the merrier." Leon and Roswitha saw the vice principal's true thoughts, which seemed to float behind him. They whispered to themselves. Vice Principal Wilson, seemingly aware of his own behavior, pretended to cough, attempting to mask his embarrassment. "I believe that on the day Noah graduates, she will lead the Dragon Clan to defeat many dragon slayers." He clenched his fists excitedly and looked firmly at Leon, expressing his confidence in Noah's growth. Leon responded to Noah's encouragement with a smile, but felt a sense of unease. "This doesn't feel right," he thought. Leon and Roswitha walked towards the other end of the hallway, engaging Vice Principal Wilson in small talk. However, they were unaware that Lao's father, who had just exited the office, was staring intently at their backs, remaining silent. At that moment, Lao's father seemed to have conceived a malicious plan. He led the other two fathers towards the opposite end of the corridor, saying with a sinister smile, "Let's go." And that's the story. Don't forget to like and subscribe for more. You can also check out the written article in the description below. See you next time.